الحمد لله وحده والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد الحمد لله وحده والصلاة والسلام على من لا نبي بعده وعلى آله وصحبه ومن تمسك بسنته إلى يوم الدين وسلم تسليما كثيرا أما بعد. As we continue explaining this great surah, Surah al-Fatiha, as we know that this surah, in light of what we presented of details before the salah, all those matters of the day of resurrection, the sequences and the events of how they would take place, all of that is mentioned in Surah Al-Fatiha. All these matters of knowledge, the importance of it, and how it's not acceptable for a Muslim to worship Allah upon ignorance and be a Muslim that's just Muslim by tradition or custom, as we mentioned. All these matters are in Surah Al-Fatiha, as we'll break down within the coming days, inshallah. So we establish of everything that is connected with basics, as we wanted to take the time out to teach not only ourselves as adults, but also teach our youth why these matters are of the utmost importance. Due to the fact, as we know, even those who are listening online and from our sisters, that we know that us being adults, we see how the world has changed dramatically and in a very different way in such a short time frame. How the world has changed. And the affairs of what we are preparing our children for. Because we want to prepare them for when the conditions become extremely detrimental and dangerous. Not only for themselves physically, but before all that, their souls and their hereafter, and what would jeopardize or what could potentially jeopardize their hereafter. That takes precedence over everything. And we're preparing them for the inevitable coming of evils to come. And we want to leave them in a state where they're protected, that we have built for them a great foundation and a fortification, meaning a shield. There'll be a guard from when we are gone. Because now, especially when a person enters in their 40s and 50s and 60s and 70s, they're looking at now, my life is basically done here, inshallah. It's preparing now to journey, inshallah, and embarking upon the hereafter. For those who Allah has given insight, their heart is slowly departing from this world. And their heart is embarking upon Allah and the hereafter if Allah gives that person tawfiq. They lose interest in this world, especially as you get older and mature, and you've experienced a lot of things. You start to lose interest in this world because you see where it's going, you see how it is. It truly wasn't meant for us to be here. It wasn't meant to be ups, downs, hurt, times when you're good and times when you're down. You could tell this, it's all a test. We weren't meant to be here. Everything's a test. So these are the reasons why we take the initiative to educate our children in preparation for what's coming. Because a lot of us as fathers and mothers are concerned for the well-being of our children when we leave and when we're gone. Because at any given moment, we could pass away, and what we left for our children should be the most important thing, which is what we're studying now, which is knowledge, and that is the shield that will protect them from the evils that will come. Because I said in the khutbah, the inevitable release of the Dajjal is coming together. You see it. The release of the Dajjal is coming. The evils and everything that's taken place in this world are leading up to that. And the thing that will protect our children is the education of what we're presenting now. Teaching them fundamentals. And this is to our children that are listening now and our youth. You eventually, and we ask Allah to protect us and you. You will eventually have to face certain tasks. You're going to have to take on certain things that maybe might be a great test for you. And where we are gone. And we have to work diligently. Of course, while we're here, we protect you. Us, not just the fathers of our children, but all of us are considered fathers of these children. It's just not one father for one child That's not how the Ummah Muhammadiyah looks at affairs. They look at affairs that everyone's child in this room is my child. And I have to look over and watch him. And I have to teach him and protect him. For those matters that are coming, like we said, the utmost or the greatest of all evils that are inevitable is coming to that. And that is what we're now, like we said, preparing our children for by learning this book. Learning Surah Al-Fatiha and its meanings. So when they recite, it has a deeper meaning and it penetrates your heart. Not just by mere enjoyment of its recital or its recitation, but having the meanings in the manner in which it deeply impacts your heart. So when you recite it, now you can draw close to Allah because you know what it necessitates. You know the details and you know the affairs that you're asking Allah to protect you and you're asking Allah to aid you upon, because the affairs that are the greatest mission that all of us are setting out day and night working hard, all of us, and that it bothers us in our minds every night, is that whether or not we made tahqiq al-ubudiyyah of Allah. Truly. Those of Ahlul Sunnah and the people who truly are embarking upon and their heart is detaching from this world every day and embarking upon the hereafter, they're worried about whether or not they accomplish their mission in this world. Is it to attain a lot of money? No. The mission is tahqiq al-ubudiyyah to Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala. The mission of this world is actualizing the ubudiyyah of Allah. That is the reason and what one worries about every night. And sometimes it wakes me up in the middle of the night. Did I make tahqiq al-ubudiyyah of Allah? Did I rid myself of arrogance? Did I rid myself of so many affairs in which one cannot actualize that mission except by the aid of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in His tawfiq? Because tahqiq al-ubudiyyah of Allah is the most difficult of affairs. And the only way you can carry out that mission and execute it in a manner that's pleasing to Allah is by the aid of Allah. By the aid of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, those matters of what we're explaining, this is what we're coming together for, not only just for ourselves as adults and concerned mothers and fathers, but for our children and what we will leave for them when we depart. Because like we said, they are about to embark upon some difficult days. That even it worries fathers, it worries me, whether or not I made tahqiq of al-ubudiyyah of Allah, or did I not prepare my children for when I die? Then they have to embark upon certain trials or tribulations that it might shake and rattle them and ruffle their feathers. You worry about these things. You're concerned. So that's the reason why, like we said, it's no time for petty nonsense, brothers and sisters all over the world. We have bigger things to worry about. Bigger things to prepare these children, prepare our future generations. We see the world has changed. We've seen how many people have died these past couple of years. You see it. Every day I hear someone dying. Every day, a child dying, adult dying, mother dying. I hear it every day. Sometimes I have to turn my phone off just to get some break, a mental break. Just to turn it off. People get mad. Because I got to get myself a break from here to negativity. I have to maintain my sanity too. But just to hear death all the time and bad news, the affairs, like we said, shows that the signs of the hour are here. So what we going to do about it? The first thing what we do, we educate ourselves. And we work based upon knowledge, not upon emotions. Emotions is dangerous. We work based upon ilm in accordance to kitab and sunnah. No more, no less. You'll find that Surah Al-Fatiha, that surah is from the jumla to surah, التي أفردت للتوحيد. It is from those surah in which it was specifically made for the topic of Tawheed only. Is it clear, everyone? Surah Al-Fatiha min jumlat al-suwar التي أفردت للتوحيد. It was from the surah in which it was singled out by the affair of monotheism of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There are 4 surah in the Quran. You find the great Shaykh Ḥamzah, as he goes on to say, rahimahullah, أربعة في القرآن الكريم, Surah Al-Fatiha, in which you'll find that these surah singled out Tawheed. That was its only topic. It didn't attain or it didn't contain other affairs. As we know, brothers and sisters, the whole Quran is in Tawheed. The whole Quran is in the Tawheed of Allah. A person would say, how? The whole Quran is in the Tawheed of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. quickly I'll mention it. But what the great Al-Allama Ibn al-Qayyim, as we know, mentioned and said, Al-Quran kulluhu fi Tawheed. The Quran, all of it is in monotheism and worship of Allah. Number one, by the rububiyyah of Allah. Of course, we know the verses that come in Allah's actions. From Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sending down rain, creating the earth, sending from rain, creating the creation, the rububiyyah of Allah, the uluhiyyah of Allah, the worship of Allah, and the names and the attributes of Allah. That is the fundamentals of Tawheed. Right? The person would say, what about the affairs of ahkam and the affairs that's pertaining to halal and haram? I'm going to get to that. طيب. Then he says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions that first in the Quran, of course, which is the fundamentals of Tawheed. Then Allah mentions the rights of Tawheed. The rights of Tawheed, meaning that they're not complete except by carrying out other acts. It's not complete. So, for example, salat. For example, zakat. For example, hajj. For example, umrah. For example, siyam. For example, leaving off halal and haram, zina, not indulging in khamr or riba, and all those other matters. Those are from the rights of Tawheed. Meaning that if you do not actualize the Tawheed of Allah, the rights of Tawheed are fruitless. As we know the ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in his book, وَلَقَدْ أُوحِيَ إِلَيْكَ وَإِلَى الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكَ لَإِنْ أَشْرَكْتَ لَيَحْبَطَنَّ عَمَلُكَ وَلَتَكُونَنَّ مِنَ الْخَاسِرِينَ بَلِ اللَّهَ فَاعْبُدْ وَكُنْ مِنَ الشَّاكِرِينَ. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in his book, that has been revealed to you, Muhammad, has been revealed to those before you. If you set up partners with Allah in his worship, لَيَحْبَطَنَّ عَمَلُكَ, your deeds are null and void. Your deeds are null and void, and you will most definitely be from the losers. Rather, let Allah be the one who you worship alone, and be from those who are thankful. That means, that ayah, which comes in Surah Zumar, I can't remember the number, it says Surah Zumar, which shows that the rights of Tawheed are insignificant unless you carry out the what? The fundamentals of the rububiyyah, the uluhiyyah, and the al-asma' wa sifat of Allah. The rights of Tawheed, which is from, like we said, siyam, zakat, and other than that. Those are from the mukammilat of Tawheed, what completes it. So, the whole Quran so far is the Tawheed of Allah. Because I just mentioned zakat, siyam, sadaqah, fasting, all of that. Those are from the rights of Tawheed. Meaning that if Tawheed is not actualized in those categories, then those acts are what, everyone? Invalid. Then you have the stories, and the person would say, what about the stories of the prophets, of course? The stories of the prophets and the messengers with their people. Meaning, the stories of those who believed the prophets and the messengers and embraced the revelation when it was sent down, which is the repayment and the reward of the people of Tawheed at the end of the day. Meaning what they will receive of great reward in this world and in the hereafter. From those who believe in the prophets and the messengers, they were considered the people of Tawheed. So the Quran still is in Tawheed. And the punishment and inevitable consequences that one will attain if they disbelieve in the revelation and disbelieve in Iman and all the affairs that the prophets and the messengers were sent with, of what will be the jaza of Ahl Shirk, wal Kufr. What would have been the consequences and the torment of those who rejected the messages of the prophets and the messengers, of what they will receive of torment in the hereafter. A'adana Allahu wa iyyakum min dhalik. May Allah give us a refuge, and give us and you refuge from that. That will be as a result of them rejecting Tawheed. So the whole Quran from beginning to end is in what? It's in the Tawheed of Allah. So you see the deep understanding of the great al-Allama Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah. That now you understand the reason why he said al-Quran kulluhu fi Tawheed. The Quran, all of it is in the Tawheed of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Is it clear so far, everyone? طيب, there are surah that was singled out with this affair. Number one is Surah al-Fatiḥah. Number two is Surah al-Kafirun. Surah al-Kafirun was singled out with Tawheed. Which category can anyone think of? قُلْ يَا أَيُّهَا الْكَافِرُونَ لَا أَعْبُدُ مَا تَعْبُدُونَ. Clear now. As soon as you say that, خلاص. Rububiyyah. Uluhiyyah. لا أعبد ما تعبدون. The uluhiyyah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the worship. And what everyone? Al-wala wal-bara. And wala wal-bara also, meaning of your allegiance or your loyalty and your separation and your disavowalment means separation from the people who reject what you're upon. That's wala wal-bara. But at any rate, the Surah Al-Kafirun is singled out by what? With the Tawheed of al-uluhiyyah of Allah, the ibad of Allah. That's number 2. I'm going to test everybody on this. So just watch it. Write it down. So Surah Al-Fatiha is from those surah that's singled out with Tawheed. Number 2, Surah Al-Kafirun. Number 3 is Qul Huwallahu Ahad. Surah Al-Ikhlas, which is which category, everyone? Al-Asma wa Sifat. Bab al-Asma wa Sifat. You can include the uluhiyyah in there. But it's clearly, of course, pertaining more to Al-Asma wa Sifat, the names and attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And lastly, even though some of them include Surah An-Nas inside of that Surah what? Al-Falaq. Surah Al-Falaq. Some of them included in it Surah An-Nas, of course. Some of them divided when they say Surah Al-Falaq, but they also included in it Surah An-Nas. Surah Al-Falaq, which is included in it what? Tawheed what? قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ الْفَلَقِ. Rububiyyah of Allah. The Rububiyyah of Allah. And of course what is in it of ibadah. By you seeking refuge, as we know, that's Tawheed al-ibadah. But you'll find that all these four surah are singled out by the Tawheed of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Number 1, Surah Fatiha. Number 2, Al-Kafirun, which is specifically for what? Al-Uluhiyyah. Surah Al-Ikhlas, Bab the names and attributes of Allah. Ahsantum. طيب, after that, Al-Falaq, and some of them included, of course, in it, Surah An-Nas, which is specifically or is pertaining to what? Rububiyyah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Is it clear, everyone? طيب. All of this indicates the importance of Tawheed. Why, everyone? You'll find that the great Shaykh Ḥamzah, he goes on to say, لأن الله أنزل في هذا التوحيد في كل نوع منه صورة كاملة وهذا لم يكن في الأحكام أبدا ولا في الفروع كما قال الله عز من قائل وما خلقت الجن والإنس إلا ليعبدون. That he says, because Allah has sent down about this topic of Tawheed, of every category, a complete surah. Just as we just mentioned a moment ago, right? The uluhiyyah, the rububiyyah, the asma wa sifat. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent down a surah in each one of those categories, either it being comprehensive for all of it, for example, Surah Al-Fatiha, which has all of the categories. Or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent down, of course, surah singling out or focus being on a single category from amongst those categories. And he said, you'll find this is all coincides with the verse, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Dhariyat, I have not created jinn and mankind except to worship me. And we know liya'budun means what, everyone? Liyuwahidun, in order to worship me. In order to worship me. So you'll find that the first command in this regard, as a matter of fact, let's close that out. So that's the first thing we wanted to mention. If you open the Mus'haf now, and now you go from Surah Al-Fatiha to Surah Al-Baqarah, for example, the first command that Allah mentions in his book, in Surah Al-Baqarah, is what, everyone? Ya ayyuhan nas, u'budu rabbakum. Oh people, worship your Lord. That's in a command form. So the first command in Surah Al-Baqarah, as we know, is the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is the reason, like we said, of how this affair is extremely important and of the utmost importance. And that's why we mention its details, which brings us to the other affair that I want to mention about an hour ago, a couple hours ago. I said that everything in the Quran goes back to Surah al-Fatiha. Everything. Everything of the atrocities taking place around us, everything that's in the Quran of the details, all of it is mentioned generally within Surah al-Fatiha. How is that? You'll find that the great Imam even says this. He said, لأن هذه السورة يعني سورة الفاتحة اشتملت على القرآن كله لا توجد آية في القرآن إلا ومضمونها موجود في هذه السورة عرف ذلك من عرفه وجهله من جهله وذلك لأن هذه السورة اشتملت على ثلاثة أشياء هي القرآن كله. The surah now we want to focus on that contains the whole Quran and all the categories of Tawheed is Surah Al-Fatiha. He says you'll find that its contents of everything in the Quran is in this surah. The one who knows it, and the one who's ignorant of it is ignorant of it. Because this surah, everybody get ready to write down. This surah, اشتملت على ثلاثة أشياء. It contains three affairs. All of it, meaning the Quran, all of it. Number one, Out Tawḥīd. Number one is Out Tawḥīd. That's the foundation. Monotheism, or worship of Allah. That's the first category. The first category is what? Tawheed. Number two is a targheeb. A targheeb, which is the reward that Allah has prepared for the one who does a certain matter. That's the second category. Number three is tarheeb. 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 Ta ra ha ya ba. Tarheeb. Ta ra ha ya ba. Tarheeb. Tarheeb is the warnings. The warnings of the consequences for those who partake in certain acts. If you understand those 3 points, you'll find that the whole Quran does not go outside of that. You understand, everyone? For number one is Tawheed, huwa al-asas. Number two is a targheeb. A targheeb meaning the promise or the promise of those rewards and merits and benefits that one will attain if they do certain acts. That's number two. Number three, a tarheeb. A tarheeb, which is the warnings, al-wa'id. The warnings of the one, if they partake in a certain act, then they will receive those consequences. You'll find that the whole Quran does not go outside of that, which we'll talk about in a moment. You'll find that the great Imam goes on to say, وَجَرَتْ سُنَّةَ اللَّهِ عَزَّ وَجَلْ فِي كِتَابِهِ الْحَكِيمِ الْجَمْعُ بَيْنَ التَّرْغِيبِ وَالتَّرْهِيبِ بَعْدَمَا يَشْرَحُ لَنَا هَذَا التَّوْحِيدِ. He says, you'll find that the Sunnah of Allah has been carried out. Rather, you'll find in His wise book, subhanahu, gathering between targheeb and tarheeb, after He explained to us this Tawheed. So is everyone with me so far? So keep listening. And you'll find the whole Quran is in this surah. And it's going to blow your mind. Like, oh, I never knew that. I've probably been Muslim for 30 years. I never knew that. Is it? It's okay?
Yeah, the mic's on.
Oh, it's still on?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That I've been Muslim for 30 years and I never knew this. I never knew the whole Quran is inside Surah Al-Fatiha. طيب. Now he goes on to say, وَلَمَّا ذَكَرَ اللَّهِ أقسام التوحيد بجميع أنواعها أتبع ذلك بالترغيب في هذا التوحيد والترهيب من مخالفة هذا التوحيد ثم صنف الناس بحسب عملهم أو بحسب اتصالهم بهذا التوحيد. He says when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions that categories of Tawheed in this surah, all of them, as we're going to talk about inshallah, don't worry. We're going to all open Surah al-Fatiha, and we'll all be able to what? Pinpoint everything together. And we'll study it together. We're just laying down the instructions, and then once you put everything and correlate together, you'll be satisfied, inshallah. So it says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned the categories of Tawheed, all of them. And he follows it up with targheeb in this Tawheed, meaning to those who will receive the promise or the merits or the rewards because of this Tawheed. And instilling that fright of the one who opposes it. Then you'll find after that, in this surah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes people in categories. Allah categorizes people. Because you'll find that that's a shubha, that's an ambiguity that's used from certain individuals. It's not permissible tasnif an-nas. As you'll find from the du'ats of falsehood that spread this ambiguity or this doubt. They say, Ya akhi, it's not permissible to categorize people. It's not permissible to say this person's in this group or this person's in that group. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala categorized people. We'll talk about that inshallah from this surah. Not only in this surah, also in Surah al-Baqarah. Rather, in the first page of Surah al-Baqarah, Allah mentions 3 different groups. Mentions the people of Tawheed, the people of Shirk, and the people of Nifaq. And he categorizes them. And categorizes some of their ways, some of their tricks. And the people of Iman, he starts with first, categorizes their belief, and categorizes their acts. Those who establish the prayer, those who believe in the unseen, those who believe in the Tawheed, to the end of it. Is it clear what I'm saying, everyone? Jayyid. Based upon that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala categorizes people in accordance of their actions and accordance to how they're connected with this Tawheed in Surah Al-Fatiha. So we'll talk about that inshallah. So, the affair revolves around these 3 matters that we're just mentioning now. هذه الأمور الثلاثة إذا قرأنا القرآن من سورة البقرة إلى آخر سورة الناس لا نجد آية واحدة خرجت عنها. He said these 3 matters that we just laid down for all the Muslims. He says if you read the Quran from Surah Al-Baqarah to the last of Surah Al-Nas, there's not one verse that goes outside of these 3 categories. He said, وبمناسبة أننا ذكرنا أن هذه السورة اشتملت على هذه الأمور الثلاثة يسألنا السائل يقول حصرك هذه السورة أو حصرك القرآن كله في هذه الأمور الثلاثة كيف يتفق مع قول بعض العلماء أن القرآن اشتمل على أمور أكثر من 3 كما نظمه الناظم في قوله. So we're going to mention this now. He said for now, on the occasion that we mentioned that in this surah that it indicates 3 affairs. Someone might ask, you just restricted this surah and you restricted the Quran, all of it in these 3 matters. How can it agree with the statement of some of the scholars by them saying, indeed the Quran that it contains or is comprehensive for more than these 3 things, just as the poet says in his poetry. What's the poetry? Write this down. حلال حرام محكم متشابه بشير نذير قصة بشير نذير قصة عظة. I'll say it again. حلال حرام محكم متشابه بشير نذير قصة مثل أو عظة عفوا عظة مثل. I'm sorry everyone. Comes at the عظة is مثل. I'll say it one more time. حلال حرام محكم متشابه بشير نذير قصة عظة مثل. Halalun, I think it's all of us know inshallah halal, right? Haram, all of us know inshallah haram. Muhkamun, I'm going to explain that. And if we don't have time tonight, that will be where we start tomorrow. That would be even more, that would be nice. طيب. Muhkamun mutashabihun. Bashirun, Nadhirun, Qissatun, Idatun, Mathal. Mathal. Mim, Tha, Lam. Mathal. Jayyid. So, this is what Ahl al-Ilm say in regards to the Quran. This is what we find in the Quran. So, let's break down and translate it real quick. Halal, haram, I think that's clear. Muhkam, mutashabih, we'll explain that tomorrow. Or we'll explain a little bit tonight, inshallah. There's a little bit minutes left. Then you have Bashir, Nadhir. Bashir, the one, the giver of glad tidings, the warner, the stories, the exhortations, and the examples, or not the examples, the method. طيب. How does that correlate with three categories? Study it. So let's break it down. The great Imam goes on to say, I'm sure that some of us not heard the Quran and Surah Fatiha being broken down in this way, have they? Some of you did. Some of you, I was like, it's the first time I've heard this. That's good. We all came to learn. All of us came to study and benefit. So listen to this is the reason why we need to be acquainted with these great ai*imma. Shaykh Hamad, rahimahullah. So he goes on to say, يقول بعض أهل العلم, very the whole Quran, that it what researches these matters in which this poetry contains. وأنت في كلمتك هذه حصرت القرآن في ثلاثة أشياء أي في ثلث 9 وبقي ثلثان. جيد. So he goes on to say, these matters, of course, all of it is connected. What is in this poetry we just gave? And your word, or what you just now, restricted the Quran in these three matters. How does it correlate? How is it all connected? What's the tawfiq? This is the tawfiq. So these, how many affairs are mentioned in that particular poetry? Count it. How many? 9. Jayyid. So this surah containing these 9 affairs, all of it goes back to these 3 things. All of it. Wajhu dhalik. For example, let's start with halal and haram. Halalun is what? Wa'd, which is what? Targhib. Halal is what? Targhib. What if you do it? What? Of course, number 1, Tawheed is the foundation. Because if Tawheed isn't there and you don't actualize it properly, you commit polytheism, your Targhib doesn't even matter. Is it clear? So Tawheed is there. Halal. So this also to educate our Muslims from out there, because you'll find, and I found this, and I'm sure some of us are familiar with this. How many Muslims out there we find that they abandon, they don't learn their religion? Some of them. Like I said, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide us and guide them. But out of ignorance, you'll see this. You'll find that they don't pray, but they'll eat halal meat all day. You understand? Halal. The focus is on halal meat, but they're leaving off what takes precedence and other more important affairs. Rather, if you don't carry that affair out, you indulging in halal and haram is insignificant. You understand, everyone? So, the foundation of Tawheed is there. There comes the next category, like we said. Now, see how we're going to connect everything. So look at the poetry. Look at it. Halal goes to what? Targhib. Meaning if you partake in it, you what? You get the what? Reward. Haram, you partake in it, tarheeb. Connecting, you writing this down? The kids? Write it down. Try to keep it simple as much as I can. Tarheeb. So, haram is pertaining to what? Tarheeb. So, Surah al-Fatiha contains Tawheed, Targheeb, and Tarheeb. Keep that in mind. And the whole Quran consists of those 9 matters mentioned in that poetry. As I just said. طيب. Muhkam. If one partakes in muhkam, what part, which category is that, everyone? Targhib or tarhib? Which one? Muhkam. Don't worry, I'm going to explain it. Don't worry. I'm going to break muhkam. Muhkam is going to be nice. Muhkam. Muhkam is pertaining to what? Which category? If you indulge in that and you return your affairs back to that, you attain a reward. Which is what? The targhib of Allah. Targhib. Mutashabihat. You partake in that. You follow that. Which one? Tarhib. If you indulge in mutashabihat, you fall and you indulge in it, you'll get the punishment from Allah. Get it? So far, the whole surah or the whole Quran is in Surah al-Fatiha. It's all there. طيب, next. Bashirun Nadhir. Glad tidings for who? The people of what? Of Tawheed, who from which category? Targhib. Nadhir. Tarhib. طيب. Qissatun. That's easy. Qissa, the stories of the prophets. Of who? The people of Tawheed and the people of Shirk. The people of Tawheed. Huh? Which category? The people of Shirk. Tarhib. Ahsant. Idha. Of course, of those exhortations. That also breaks down into two types, of course. That breaks down into two categories. It's not just one. You have the exhortation for those of Tawheed and those who are disobedient. From Ahl al-Fisq and Ahl al-Fujur and Ahl al-Isyan and Kufr and Nifaq. The exhortations for the people of belief and how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of course, exhorted them, and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala spoke about them and their affairs, and those pertaining to the people of polytheism and who have diseases in their heart, how Allah also exhorted them and warned them and exhorted them. And spoke about their affairs and certain things that were hidden, and exhorted them and reminded them and encouraged them to make tawbah and to come back to the truth. That's exhortations. That's also both targhib and tarhib. It's both. And mathal. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala strikes examples for those of Tawheed and for those of who? Polytheism. He gives examples of both in the Quran. Of those who are upon Iman. Alam tara kayfa. What's that ayah? What's it? Surah Ibrahim. مثلا شجرة ثابتة أصلها ثابت وفرعها في السماء تؤتي أكلها كل حين بإذن ربها صوبني من كان يعني من هو حافظ صوبني إن أخطأت في شيء. Is that correct? كلمة طيبة كشجرة طيبة أصلها ثابت وفرعها في السماء. That's an example. It's a method. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about the example of what? The believer. He says, Allah strikes the example of what? What does it say? كلمة طيبة كشجرة طيبة أصلها ثابت وفرعها في السماء. That the good word, of course, that's طيبة. It's like that good tree, of that good plant or that tree, that it's what? Its root is firm or deep rooted, and its branches are up in the air or towards the sky. That's a method. What is the example for everyone? Of course, it's targhib. Of who? Of Tawheed. Ahsant. The people of Tawheed. And the people of Shirk are in the same context. What's the ayah? من هو حافظ ومثل كلمة خبيثة كشجرة خبيث اجتثت من أصلها. إيش الآية؟ من فوق ما لها من قرار يثبت الله الذين آمنوا بالقول الثابت في الحياة الدنيا وفي الآخرة. جيد. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala strikes the example of what? The affair of the one who's upon what? Kufr, the example. And that the kalima khabitha, kashajaratil khabithu jtuthat, meaning that its origin or its foundations are ripped up. It's not what? It's not solidified upon anything solid. That's the reason why you'll find that the people of kufr usually are people that don't have any foundation. Anything that sounds good to them, they're going to go off with it. That's the reason why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said they have no solid foundation. That's the reason why anytime the wind blows, you'll find that they're upon one thing one day and there's something else tomorrow. And you see the example that he struck for who? The people of what? Kufr. Which was it? From the categories of which? Targhib, tarhib. Tarhib. So those 9 matters go back to what? Surah al-Fatiha. The whole Quran goes back to those what? 9 matters. So far, Surah al-Fatiha, all of it contains the whole Quran. We'll stop here. Is it clear so far now? It's not? So now you see so far how the whole Surah al-Fatiha in it does not go outside those 3 categories, and like what the great Imam Shaykh Ḥamzah al-Ansari rahimahullah mentions. Is it clear so far? Any questions? We'll stop here inshallah. We'll continue tomorrow. Keep on mind, we'll start on tomorrow. Muhkamat, mutashabihat. I want to break that down a little bit more. That's going to be nice. Tafadal. What was it? Say it again, Farid. The fortress?
Poetry.
The poetry. Oh, halalun, haramun, muhkamun, mutashabihun. Bashirun, nadhirun. You with me? Bashirun, nadhirun, qissatun, idhatun, mathal. All 9 of those categories go back to those 3. And those 3 categories are where? Surah al-Fatiha. So the whole Quran is in Surah al-Fatiha. We'll break down more tomorrow, inshallah. اجتثت من فوق الأرض ما لها من قرار يثبت الله الذين آمنوا بالقول الثاني. Now remember. جيد. تفضل. Say it again. Say it.
Ikhwan, barakallahu feekum. The session is not finished. This is the question and answer session. So inshallah, those who would like to ask questions or benefit from the answers, that's great. If you want to leave, you want to chat, you can do that inshallah, but please leave the area if that's the case inshallah. Barakallahu feek.
I'm sorry, Shaykh. What you say? Say it one more time. I'm my old man now. Jay. That come to these circles. Come to these gatherings. Absolutely. Look at Kitab al-Ilm al-Sahih al-Bukhari. It's there. I remember I went over this with Shaykh Muhsin al-Ḥabbad. He had a little dawrah. And we went through Kitab al-Ilm. And subhanAllah, look how time flies. I can't even believe to say, just to even mention Shaykh Abdul Muhsin is retired. Is wow. Time flies. But look to Kitab al-Ilm al-Sahih al-Bukhari. It's a hadith that talks about the people who came, one individual, he came to the circles of knowledge. And he came close, so Allah drew close to him. And then the one who was shy, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was what? Shy from him. And then the individual who came and he turned away, and then the hadith said what? Allah turned away from him. And those were the affairs that's connected in these type of circles of knowledge. Every time a circle mentions ilm, all the time. And that same hadith, speaking about that those who are in those circles that came for the intention of knowledge, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bore witness to the angels that He forgiven them. Go back there, it's there. Kitab al-Ilm al-Sahih al-Bukhari, it's there. That's to let one know that we shouldn't try to just listen online. To actually sit like this will be a means for one to attain those great merits. And these are the things that are very beneficial, that the people come out in order, not just online. I mean, of course, by all means, if one has responsibilities or something to tend to, by all means, tend to it. We're not saying that oppress yourself or oppress your families or your children. But from time to time, you have to take some time out to come to the masjid. The masjid is extremely important, especially in these trying times we live in, and especially in this land we live in. This land has a lot of temptation, and it's a land that makes you forget about Allah very quickly. Makes your mind busy with so many different things until you're preoccupied, until you find yourself that, oh, subhanAllah, I didn't been to the masjid in 2 months. Oh, where was, you understand? So you have to, these type of gatherings of being around certain people reminds you of Allah. All of us remind each other of Allah. All of us. That we were made to come together in order to remind ourselves. Especially, like we said, we live in a type of land that will make us forget about Allah. And we live in a land that's dangerous upon our iman and dangerous upon our religion. And if we're not there for each other, we'll be destroyed. Especially these type of lands. These lands, whew, some very dark lands. Like you said, everything here is just about dunya. Everything here is just about dunya. Whereas when we come together in these type of gatherings, it's about reminding ourselves of what? Of the ultimate goal. That we're just here temporarily to handle certain things, to get in and get out. Just like you do your job. You get in and you, inshallah, you what? You get out. That's how you should look at this dunya. I'm here for a mission. To get in and what? To get out. You understand, everyone? That's the only reason why we're here. We're here to do our duties. That's why the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ said, Kun fi hadi dunya gharib or ka'abid sabil. Be in this dunya as if you're what? A stranger, or just someone what? Just someone passing by. And that's where you see this world the way it's being, that you could tell that's the way we're supposed to be. We're just like people are strangers, passing by, doing what we have to do, and we have to get out. You get in, you get out. So based upon that, to survive in that instance, we have to come together in these gatherings and in amongst ourselves, reminding each other. And this is how we remind each other. It's the best way. Educating ourselves, reading these type of books, acquainting ourselves with these type of ulama, and inshallah, that will be a means for keeping us all firm while we're in this land. And like we said, this is a land that will make you forget about Allah very quickly. And it's a land that is very dangerous upon your iman. So these homes or these buyut of Allah is extremely important in these lands that we live in. That's the reason why we care about them so much, because they are our beacon of light and survival. Other than that, outside it's just ferocious shayateen fighting us and attacking us every day. And it's our ongoing fight with ourselves every day of dealing with things that just make us forget about Allah, or things that bombard us mentally to the point where sometimes we get frustrated. But like we said, we come together in the house of Allah, and we notice that when we come to the house of Allah, we relax. We relax, you forget about the dunya, and you think about the hereafter. No. Is that your question, Shaykh? I'm sorry. Any other questions about the lesson?
There's something that I missed, and it alluded to the fact that the 3 questions in the grave, there was a 4th.
وَمَا يُدْرِيكَ.
And then it led up to the shin.
That was in affairs of the grave. That question of وَمَا يُدْرِيكَ. What will make you know that? What substantiates your claim that Allah is your Lord and the Prophet is your messenger and your religion is Islam? What makes you know that? Meaning, the knowledge that you learn right here in these lessons that you took time out to do and prioritize your life around, the knowledge is what gives you that surety. That's all. Because the angels, like you said, based upon the sharh, the benefit that's extracted from that narration is to alleviate the fact that you can't be Muslim based upon culture or tradition. You have to have knowledge. Otherwise, you'll fall in the warning in Surah Fatiha, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala described them as being وَلَضَّالِّينَ. Those who went astray. Why? Why did the Christians go astray? Because they worship Allah upon what? Jahl. Worship Allah upon ignorance. And that's why Allah had what? Disgraced them and said they are people that's considered astray. What do you see the people in church doing? Drawing close to Allah by clapping and dancing and women being promiscuous and people jumping around acting like fools and singing music and songs every other 5 or 10 minutes. which is absolute jahl. You understand, everyone? Based upon that, as we mentioned and said, those matters, what the angels will ask you in that grave is pertaining to that question. What substantiates your claim? Are you just saying it's based upon it's being customary? Is it a tradition? Is it a custom? Are you just saying it because your grandmother was Muslim? Or is it because you truly believe that? You understand? All those are to point and hint how perfect and beautiful our religion is. That ignorance is highly dispraised and condemned. You cannot worship Allah upon ignorance and deem that to be acceptable. Unacceptable in a religion. Is it clear, everyone? The affairs of the day of resurrection, that's separate. Of course, those affairs are the questions, that's in the al-Hayat al-Barzakhiyah. That's in the middle life. The affairs of the day of resurrection also revolve around that. The affairs of Aqidah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to test all of the creation, gather them together, bringing them together on the day of resurrection. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will announce His rububiyyah to all of the creation. He said, isn't it not just from your Lord that the one who created you, and the one who created you, the one who gave you, of course, your shape to the end of it, all rububiyyah of Allah, that every ummah follow what He used to worship. That's uluhiyyah. It's the first thing that'll be announced. That will be on the day of resurrection. First examination. Without that foundation, done. Your deeds and evil deeds, there isn't any. It's done. It's over. There's no hasanat. There's no sayyat. Why? Because the foundation's corrupt. Even if a person has so-called acts of good behavior, good manners, good treatment of people, if the foundation's corrupt, it's what, everyone? It's ḥabiṭ, mardud. It's fruitless. Done. The person doesn't prosper from what he's done of good if the foundation is not in this place. That's the reason why those who die in a state of fisk, what is their repayment and their reward if Allah decides to punish them? From the people of Tawheed. Why? Because of their what? Their foundation was correct. Even though they came up short of what completed that origin or that foundation. But that's why we know those narrations of Abu Sa'id al-Khudri, Sa'id ibn Malik ibn Sina, which is a Sahih Muslim, where the Prophet ﷺ talked about شفعت الملائكة وشفعت النبيون وشفعت المؤمنون حتى لم يبقى إلا أرحم الراحمين فيقبض الله قبضة فيخرج منها أقواما لم يعملوا خيرا قط قد عادوا حمما قد عادوا حمما, as it says in the narration. He said of those who pertaining to rectify their foundation, but they came up short as far as committing acts they should not have done. And this is a warning also to them to make proper tawbah, because you have time, inshallah. Well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or the message of Allah informed in that tremendous hadith of Sahih Muslim. He says that the angels will intercede for people on the day of resurrection, trying to save them from hell. شفعت الملائكة وشفعت المؤمنون وشفعت النبيون. The believers will intercede, trying to save people from hell, meaning the people of Iman. And the prophets. Until no one will be left except Allah Himself, the merciful of those who have mercy. He will grip a grip, and He will remove by it people who are in hell. They became burnt up to cinders. Why was they removed from hell? Notice it says in the narration, they didn't do any good. لَمْ يَعْمَلُوا خَيْرًا قَطْ, which also refutes those who say Shaykh al-Bani is murji'. We'll talk about that later. But anyway, in regards to those who say Shaykh al-Bani is murji', that hadith refutes them. But at any rate, that's a side issue. But in regards to this hadith of Abu Sa'id al-Khudri, because their foundation was correct, and that's why you took shahada today, because your foundation was correct, even though that person dies in a state of fisk, if the person dies and he did not make proper tawbah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will allow him to be removed out of the hellfire. Why, everyone? Foundation was correct. That's only for one who rectified their what? Foundation. But it's still a warning that you still have to what? Rectify what completes your foundation by rectifying your acts and your deeds. Because you could still be in the hellfire. Momentarily, and nobody knows what momentarily is considered in the hellfire. It could be 50,000 years. As it comes to the person who leaves off zakah. As the great Imam Hamid wal Jarh al-Ta'dib bihaq Shaykh Rabi'i, he mentioned in his Sharh wa Aqidat al-Salaf was Ashab al-Hadith, the great Imam Abu Uthman Ismail Abdul Rahman al-Naysaburi, that he mentioned in his book, that he said, who knows what's considered temporary in the hellfire? For a person that abandons zakat could be 50,000 years. What about the person who leaves off salat? You understand? So no one wants to be in the hellfire. So it's still a warning for people who commit sins. Just because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned that because their foundation is correct and they'll be in the hellfire temporarily, but however, what everyone, still they'll be purified in the hellfire. As we know, the great Imam Muhammad Aman al-Jami says, in regards to the hellfire for the people of Iman or the people of Tawheed, so the people who die upon disobedience, so يُعَذَّبُونَ فِي نَادِ الْمُوَحِّدِينَ, they'll be punished in the hellfire of the people of Tawheed. Meaning, the people of Tawheed, when they're in the hellfire, is considered تَطْهِيرٌ لَهُمْ وَلَيْسَ سِجْنًا مُؤَبَّدًا لَهُمْ. It's considered a purification for them, not an internal imprisonment for them. The internal imprisonment is for the people of disbelief and polytheism, not for the people of Iman. For people of Iman have to be purified in two ways. They could be purified even in their grave by being punished by the major sins they committed in this world. And we know the people of Sunnah, they in the grave, eventually, as we learn in the books of Aqidah, it will stop for the people of Sunnah in the grave, because it's a form of purification for the sins they committed. But for the people of Kufr, because their foundation is corrupt, it will still be what? Upon them. In regards to some of the details they talk about in regards to the day of resurrection, will it stop temporarily once the day of resurrection commences to the end of it. But anyway, the people of Tawheed also in the hereafter will be in the hellfire for those who committed sins and did not rectify their affairs with the creation. They oppressed people and they didn't rectify it. They committed major acts and they didn't rectify it. And if Allah wills, Allah could pardon it and overlook it. And if Allah wills, He could what? He could punish it. May Allah protect all of us and you from that. But the point of the matter is, everyone, is what? That the person who's in the hellfire, the people of Tawheed, is considered a purification for them, not an internal imprisonment. Why? Because their foundation was correct. Is it clear? Anything else? About the lesson? About the dars? Oh, the next lesson will be nice. Inshallah. طيب, stop here. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.